All right, let's talk about the power of language. Power of language is language that shapes attitude. So, first thing is naming. What your name is, what you hear someone's name, changes how people see you. For example, when we hear the name Hussein, we think of somebody like this. Yes, this is Osama bin Laden. I couldn't find a Saddam Hussein picture where he wasn't in a suit and tie. But that's the name we think of, the image we get, in opposed to Barack Hussein Obama. And if you look at the reason why this matters in power is that for 8 years, people were screaming, yelling that President Obama was a Muslim. His father was Muslim, but he was raised by a single mom. And although his name is Hussein and everybody yelled Muslim, nobody's got a picture of him coming or going out of a mosque. So the only reason I can think of why they were going with this is because of his name, Hussein, Barack Hussein Obama. All right, next one. Harper Lee. That's a good, strong, strapping name for a gentleman like this, correct? Well, Harper Lee was actually the author of To Kill a Mockingbird. I think it was Lynn Harper Lee was her name. But her name is an androgynous name that could be either masculine or feminine, and it tends to lean towards the masculine side. So the reason why she would have done this is because publishers didn't want to publish female authors. Well, let's look at J.K. Rowling. She wrote Harry Potter. Very successful. Why did she not go by her name? Most of us don't even know what her name is. But she did it for the same reason. We have high-powered attorneys and CEOs that are female that choose to use their initials or androgynous first name for the sake of gaining that element of power, that male privilege thing that we talked about earlier. That's what's coming into play here. So power, it does affect power. The next one is the idea that it affects status. How you speak, what you say, how you speak, the words you use, the accents you use. So we're going to play a little bit with the nonverbal here, but it still has the same thing because when we think about the words that we choose to use, it makes difference. So let's look at this let's watch this video and we'll see how it is that this matters.
So from the Bronx, from New York. I live in LA now, and I miss New York, though. Man, I miss New York. I miss all the dumb comments you hear just walking down the street. I was here one time when the U.S. soccer team lost the World Cup to a small country in Africa called Ghana. I swear, I literally heard these two New Yorkers talking. They were like, "Could you believe we lost to a bunch of freaking Ghanaians?" And I was like, I can't believe you actually think that's what they call themselves. But it's that New York accent that makes everything sound all the more ridiculous. It's the exact opposite of the English accent, where everything sounds correct, right? But see, that's the problem. In America, we mistake accent with intellect. We think they're all smart because no matter what they're talking about, they sound quite intelligent, right? It doesn't matter. They can talk about anything. It'd be like, my balls are quite itchy. And we'd be like, that dude is smart, okay? But they're not all smart. They just sound smart. They look dumb with the crooked teeth and the wacky hair. Oh yeah, you go to England, some of those Englishmen have that elephant man look about them, like, I know I look a bit frightening, but at least I sound intelligent, right?
So looking at that, and we think about this in that aspect, we actually do associate accent with intellect or terminology that we use. If you speak at a 3rd or 4th grade level, even though you may be brilliant, people are not going to think you're as smart. It's just something that we do. It's innate in all of us. And it's not just that language, it's the inverse of that language. It's not just British. Let's listen to this one really quick.
Speaking of words, I do have a few new redneck words for you. First one, mayonnaise. Mayonnaise, a lot of people here this evening. It's kind of a gift. They come to me in my sleep, I write them down. Brand new one, aorta. Aorta, cut that grass down by the ball field so the kids don't get hurt. It's just not the stupidest thing you've ever heard in your life. Initiate. My wife ate 2 hamburgers. Initiate a bag of potato chips. And last but not least, which did you? Which did you? Oh, you didn't bring your truck with you, did you?
Right. So many of us have a Southern accent. So when we walk out and we look and go to the South, or we come out of the South, we have that Southern drawl, that long twang that we got. We use certain words like slicker than the minner's Peter or something like that. We use those colloquialisms, and we use words like I ought to do this or you ought to and all those things. And the problem with this is that people automatically associate that with not being smart. So obviously, as you can see, there is a trend that not only how you speak, but the words you choose can reflect your status or where you are socioeconomically or intellectually. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is sexism. Sexism in language. And language can easily affect sexism. And a lot of these we have a very direct, easy, straight up thing that we can see. For example, the word policeman. Policeman is a man, manly man. We did come up with policewoman, but then that was always sought as something diminutive or lesser than. I got a policeman, I got a policewoman. Now we use law enforcement officer or police officer or whatever we do, and we don't distinguish. And then when we look at growing up and becoming mature, it's like going into manhood, because manhood was woo, manliness, woo, woo, woo. The reality of it is it's adulting now, right? Which none of us want to do. So if you're not already adulting, avoid that stuff like the plague. Adulting is evil. And the next one, of course, is manhole. That's that thing in the middle of the street where the Ninja Turtles live in. Please note that the feminists left this one alone. Nobody wants to call it a person hole or a person hole cover. They're like, that's a good male job. You go play in the sewers. We don't want that job. All right. But sexism carries on a lot more than just that. So let's watch this next video really quick.
Women and men face double standards. No, I don't mean just the gender pay gap. I'm also talking about the different words we use to describe men and women with the same characteristics. While he's described as charismatic, she's often described as bubbly or vivacious. You wouldn't describe him as an airhead. He's just simple. She's an airhead. She's bossy. He's assertive. Women are far more likely than men to be described as gossiping. If you don't believe me, after this film, try a Google Images search for gossip. Unlike French, German, Spanish, Polish, practically any other European language, English doesn't have gender inherent in most of its words. But some of those words become gendered anyway when we choose different words to describe men and women. Feisty is a classic example. It's rare to hear a man described as feisty. Sure, you could hear about a feisty boxer, but it's a lot more likely to describe a flyweight than a heavyweight. That's why some women hear feisty as implying a kind of figurative or literal smallness in them, and hence a note of condescension. Academics from the University of Illinois and the University of California analyzed over 100,000 works of fiction written between 1800 and 2010. They identified words connected to male or female characters and the actions they perform. The study showed that the word house used to be a strongly male term in the 1800s. House was associated with the landed gentry in the Victorian era, but as the 20th century wore on, house became a slightly more female term associated with domesticity. The writer Ben Blatt found that the verbs most associated with the pronoun she in classic fiction are shivered, wept, murmured, screamed, and married. The most commonly associated with he are muttered, grinned, shouted, chuckled, and killed. An algorithm used by those academics who studied house tries to determine a character's gender based only on the language used in descriptions and dialogue. These predictions were right 75% of the time for books written around 1800, but that falls to just about 65% of the time in books written around 2000. In other words, the vocabulary used to describe women and men is becoming more blurred, so that gender stereotypes like feisty are less common than they used to be. Nearly all words have different shades of meaning. While the speaker intends the positive one, the hearer often hears the negative one. That's a good reason to avoid compliments that convey a note of surprise.
Lane, you are so articulate.
Really? Scouring your mind for evocative language isn't easy, but working hard to be original and to avoid giving unwanted offense can only be a good thing.
All right. So as you can see, sexism can actually be just in the adjectives or adverbs that we choose to describe rather than actual specific words.